I've always loved the mornings in this old house. For 43 years I've woken in this room, in this bed, that still sags slightly on the left side where Walter used to sleep. The mattress remembers him, even if the world has moved on. 8 years now since the funeral, and I still catch myself reaching for him in that gray space between sleep and waking, my hand finding only cool sheets and silence. But that morning was different. I opened my eyes to a stillness that felt wrong, heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. The light through the lace curtains had that pale quality of early spring in Savannah, somewhere between silver and gold, and the azaleas outside would be starting to blush pink. Usually I can hear the mockingbird who lives in the magnolia. He starts his symphony around 6 and doesn't quit until I've had my second cup of coffee. That morning, nothing. Just the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the settling groans of a house that's older than any of us. I'm 68 years old. You learn to pay attention to the quiet, because the quiet is where the truth hides. I pushed back the quilt, the one my mother's hand stitched during the summer of 1965, the summer before I married Walter, and set my feet on the hardwood floor. Cold. Always cold in the mornings, no matter how much I run the heat. Walter used to warm my slippers on the radiator. Little kindnesses, the ones you don't notice until they're gone. The hallway stretched before me like it always does, family portraits lining the walls. My grandmother in her wedding dress, 1928, the year she received the sapphire necklace from my grandfather. My mother on her 18th birthday, wearing the diamond ring that would one day be hers, and then mine, and then... I stopped at the top of the stairs. Something was wrong. The third step creaks. It's creaked since 1987 when Tyler was 12 and tried to sneak out to meet some friends and hit that step so hard the whole house heard it. I'd know that creak anywhere. And I could have sworn, in that half-dream state of early waking, I'd heard it sometime in the night. I'd told myself it was the house settling. Old homes breathe and moan like old women, like me. But now, standing in the thin morning light, my hand on the banister Walter installed himself, I felt something cold curl around my heart. I made myself walk to the vanity. It's a beautiful piece, mahogany, beveled mirror, brass handles shaped like rosebuds. My mother's before it was mine. It survived 2 world wars, 3 moves, and a flood that almost took the whole first floor in 1979. Some things are stubborn that way. Some things refuse to be washed away. The velvet-lined drawer where I kept them was slightly open. My breath stopped. I remember standing there for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than seconds. My hand hovered over the brass handle like I was afraid to touch it, afraid to confirm what I already knew in the marrow of my bones. That cold feeling had spread from my heart to my whole body. My fingers felt numb. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Open it, I told myself. Just open it, Evelyn. Don't be a foolish old woman. I opened it, empty. The red velvet stared up at me like an open wound. Those little indentations where my mother's ring used to sit. The 3. 2-carat diamond my father saved 3 years of paychecks to buy. The ring she wore for 51 years until arthritis swelled her fingers and she pressed it into my palm and said, "For your granddaughter. Promise me, Evie." Gone. The sapphire necklace, 1928. My grandmother wore it to her first dance with my grandfather. She wore it to his funeral in 1962. My mother wore it when she buried her. I wore it when I buried my mother. Gone. The pearl drops Walter gave me on our wedding night, his hands shaking as he clasped them around my neck, whispering, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Evelyn Marie, and I'm going to spend my whole life making sure you know it." Gone. The Krugerrands. 12 gold coins Walter had collected over the years, our little emergency fund. When everything else falls apart, he used to say, gold remembers its value, just like love. All of it. Gone. I couldn't breathe. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the vanity so hard I thought the wood might splinter, and I saw my face in that beveled mirror, an old woman with wild morning hair and eyes that didn't understand what they were seeing. Burglary, I thought. Someone broke in. Call the police. Call... Tyler. My hand found the phone before my mind caught up. I dialed his number, the same number I'd been calling for 47 years, through skinned knees and broken hearts and every holiday he bothered to remember. My son, my only child, the baby I'd held in the recovery room while Walter wept with joy. 3 rings. 4. What? Not a question, a complaint. And behind his voice, noise, announcements. The hum of 1,000 strangers moving through space. An airport. Tyler? My voice came out wrong. Thin. Old. Tyler, something's happened. The jewelry. Someone broke into the house. Everything is gone. I need you to... Mom. He cut me off. His voice was flat, cold, like he was reading a script he'd rehearsed in the mirror. Mom, stop. Nobody broke in. The floor dropped out from under me. What? Chloe and I needed a fresh start, okay? You don't even wear that old stuff anymore. It just sits in that drawer collecting dust while we're out here trying to build a life. Do you have any idea how hard it is? The economy, the stress we're under? I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Consider it an advance on my inheritance, he continued, and I could hear it now. Chloe's voice in the background, sharp and pleased, saying something I couldn't quite make out. We're boarding a flight to the Maldives. We deserve this, Mom. We've earned it. Tyler. I finally found my voice, and it surprised me. How steady it was. How calm. That jewelry wasn't for me. It was never for me. It was for Lily. For her college. Your daughter, Tyler. I promised your grandmother. He laughed. My son laughed at me. Lily can get student loans like everybody else. Chloe and I deserve this vacation a hell of a lot more than she needs some fancy degree. She'll figure it out. Kids do. Tyler, please. I gotta go, Mom. They're calling our boarding group. First class, if you can believe it. A pause. Chloe's voice again, sharper this time. Don't call again. We'll be busy. Click. Silence. I sat there in my mother's chair, in front of my mother's vanity, holding a phone that had gone dead. The grandfather clock ticked. The mockingbird finally started singing, though it sounded far away now. Distant, like it was singing in a world I no longer belonged to. The empty velvet stared up at me, and I stared back. But here's what my son forgot, what he never bothered to learn, because Tyler only ever saw what he wanted to see. I spent 30 years of my life as a professional jewelry appraiser. 30 years of learning to spot the fakes. 30 years of understanding that the most valuable things aren't always what they appear to be. And 7 years ago, when Chloe's eyes started lingering too long on my mother's ring at Christmas dinner, I began to make arrangements. I looked at that empty drawer, and I felt something shift in my chest. The devastation was there, yes. The betrayal. That would take longer to process, the full weight of it. My own son, my own blood. But beneath all that, I smiled. They had no idea what they'd actually taken. The coffee went cold 3 hours ago. I sat at my kitchen table, the same oak table where I taught Tyler to write his name, where Walter and I planned our retirement, where my mother took her last meal before the hospital. And I watched the sunlight move across the floor like it was any other morning. Like the world hadn't cracked open and shown me its rotten core. The phone sat silent beside me. I hadn't called the police. What would I tell them? My son robbed me. My son, who I carried for 9 months and nursed through colic and chickenpox and a broken arm when he fell out of the magnolia tree at age 7. My son, who looked at me with Walter's eyes and told me I was the best mother in the whole world. That boy was gone. Maybe he'd been gone for years, and I just couldn't see it. I lifted the coffee cup to my lips out of habit, grimaced at the bitter cold, and set it back down. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the lemon cake I'd baked 3 days ago for the church social. I'd sent half of it home with Darlene. Darlene. The name surfaced like a splinter, working its way out of skin. I turned it over in my mind, examining its edges. 15 years we'd been neighbors. 15 years of shared recipes and holiday dinners, and sitting on her porch drinking sweet tea while the cicadas screamed in the summer heat. When Walter died, Darlene was the first one at my door. She brought a casserole and held my hand and didn't say a single stupid thing about God's plan or better places. She just sat with me in the grief. But lately, and I felt sick even thinking it, lately things had been different. I pressed my fingers to my temples and forced myself to remember. The mind has a way of softening the past, of sanding down the edges of things we don't want to see. I needed to stop protecting myself. I needed to look at the truth. It started about 18 months ago. Darlene had pulled back from our friendship. Nothing dramatic, just a slow cooling. Fewer porch visits, shorter phone calls. I told myself she was busy, that grief affects everyone differently, that maybe she was dealing with her own loneliness since her husband passed. Then, suddenly, she was everywhere again. I ran into Chloe at the Piggly Wiggly, she mentioned one afternoon last spring. "What a lovely girl, so interested in you, Evelyn. Asked all about how you're doing." I should have heard the warning in that. Chloe had never been interested in me before, not once in 5 years of marriage to my son. She tolerated me the way you tolerate an ugly piece of furniture you can't throw out. Polite, distant, waiting. She wanted to know if you still do your jewelry appraisals, Darlene continued, refilling my iced tea. "I told her you'd retired years ago, but you've still got the best eye in Georgia." The best eye in Georgia. Darlene had laughed when she said it. I'd laughed too. Now the memory curdled in my stomach. The questions kept coming, disguised as friendly concern. "Do you still keep your mother's pieces in that old vanity? You really should get a safe, Evelyn. Anyone could walk right in." And, "What time do you usually go to bed these days? I worry about you alone in that big house." And, "Does Tyler still have a key? That's good. Families should look out for each other." I'd answered every question. Trusting, stupid. Darlene Vickers, my friend of 15 years, feeding information to Chloe like a spy in enemy territory. But why? What had Chloe promised her? I thought of Darlene's lonely little house with the yellow shutters, her empty guest room, the way she lit up whenever anyone paid her the slightest attention. Chloe was beautiful and young and glamorous. At least she projected that image. Her Instagram was full of filtered photos and inspirational quotes about living your best life. I'd seen Darlene liking every single post. Inclusion. That's what Chloe had offered her. A seat at the table. The illusion of friendship. And Darlene had sold me for it. I pushed back from the table and walked to the window, looking out at the azaleas. Pink and defiant, blooming like they didn't know about betrayal. Like the world was still beautiful. The church. The thought arrived unwanted, but once it was there, I couldn't shake it loose. 3 months ago, Pastor Ron had pulled me aside after the Sunday service. He'd had that particular expression on his face, the one he uses when someone's died or when he's about to ask for money. Serious, gentle, slightly rehearsed. "Evelyn," he'd said, his hand warm on my shoulder, "I've been meaning to talk to you. Some folks in the congregation have expressed concern." I remembered feeling a flicker of irritation. "Concern about what, Pastor?" "Well," he'd shifted his weight, "you've seemed a bit forgetful lately, missing a few names, that sort of thing, and living alone in that big house at your age." He'd produced a brochure from his jacket pocket. "Willow Creek Senior Living," the cover read, with a photo of silver-haired people playing checkers in a sunny room. "I just want you to know there are options, wonderful communities where you'd have support." I'd taken the brochure because I was too stunned to refuse. Forgetful? I could still recite every gemstone in the periodic table. I could still spot a fake diamond at 20 paces. I'd never missed a name in my life. "Who expressed concern?" I'd asked, keeping my voice level. Pastor Ron had hesitated. "I don't want to betray any confidences. But you know how people talk. They care about you, Evelyn. People." "Right. One person, I'd bet. One person with honey blonde hair and a smile like a closed door." I'd thrown the brochure away when I got home. Told myself it was just Pastor Ron being Pastor Ron, well-meaning but easily swayed. The man would believe anything if you cried prettily enough. But now I saw it for what it was. The first salvo in a war I hadn't known I was fighting. Chloe wasn't just stealing my jewelry, she was stealing my credibility. Planting seeds throughout the congregation that old Evelyn Hartwell was losing her faculties, couldn't be trusted, might need to be looked after. So that when the jewelry went missing and I tried to tell people what happened, who would believe me? Just a confused old woman, probably misplaced them herself. So sad what happens when the mind starts to go. I gripped the windowsill until my knuckles went white. The scope of it took my breath away. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't Tyler waking up one day and deciding to rob his mother. This was planned. Months of groundwork. A patient, methodical dismantling of my defenses. Chloe's work. It had to be. Tyler didn't have the attention span for this kind of long game, but he'd gone along with it. That was the part that cut deepest. My son had looked at this elaborate scheme to defraud and humiliate his own mother, and he'd said yes. I found myself moving through the house without consciously deciding to. The living room with its faded oriental rug, the hallway with its parade of ancestors, Walter's study, still smelling faintly of pipe tobacco and old books, though he'd been gone 8 years. I was looking for something. I didn't know what. The guest room, where Tyler and Chloe stayed during their rare visits, always brief, always strained, always ending with Chloe claiming a headache or an early meeting. I pushed open the door. The bed was made with the quilt Tyler had slept under as a child. The nightstand held a lamp and a small stack of books no one had touched in years. And there, plugged into the wall, half hidden behind the curtain, Tyler's old iPad. I stood very still. He'd left it here months ago, claiming he'd upgraded and didn't need it anymore. I'd assumed it was dead, useless, forgotten. But the little green light was on, still charged, still connected to our Wi-Fi. My hands were steady as I picked it up. 30 years of handling precious, fragile things had taught me control. I pressed the home button. It opened without a password. Of course it did. Tyler had never been careful about security. He'd never had to be. He'd always had someone else to clean up his messes. The Messages app was right there on the home screen. I shouldn't read them. That's what the old Evelyn would have said. The Evelyn who still believed her son was the boy who brought her dandelions and told her she was the best mother in the whole world. That Evelyn was dead now, killed this morning by a phone call from an airport. I opened the messages. The thread between Tyler and Chloe stretched back months. I scrolled, my eyes moving faster than my heart could handle. Chloe, 4 months ago. Darlene confirmed she keeps them in the vanity. Same place for 40 years. Your mother is a creature of habit. Tyler. Are you sure about this? What if she notices? Chloe. She won't notice. She's getting old, baby. Everyone at church already thinks she's slipping. Pastor Ron practically has her in a nursing home already. Tyler. I don't know. Chloe. Do you want the life we deserve or not? Your mother is sitting on $500,000 of jewelry she never even wears. It's selfish, Tyler. That's your inheritance. We shouldn't have to wait until she dies to live our lives. Tyler, 2 months ago. Made a copy of her key today. She didn't suspect anything. Chloe. Good boy. I've already booked the Maldives, first class. We leave March 15th. Tyler. What about Lily's college? Mom said she was saving the jewelry for... Chloe. Lily is not our problem. She can get loans like everyone else. God, Tyler, stop being such a pushover. Your mother babied you your whole life and look where it got you. It's time to take what's yours. I set the iPad down carefully. My hands weren't shaking. I expected them to be, but they were perfectly still. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed noon. 12 steady tones, same as they'd been for 60 years. Darlene, Pastor Ron, my own son, Chloe, the architect of it all. They thought they'd robbed a helpless old woman. They thought they'd covered their tracks, poisoned the well, made sure no one would believe me even if I tried to fight back. They thought wrong. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. Samuel Okonkwo, my old colleague in Atlanta. The master jeweler who'd made the replicas 7 years ago when I first saw the greed growing in Chloe's eyes. He answered on the second ring. "Evelyn, it's been too long. How are the pieces holding up?" "Beautifully, Samuel." I looked out the window at the azaleas. "Just beautifully. Tell me, if someone tried to sell them to a reputable buyer, how long before they'd know?" He laughed, low and warm. "About 30 seconds if the buyer knows what they're looking at. The cubic zirconia is flawless, but a thermal probe won't lie. And those gold coins? They'd fail the acid test faster than you can say fraud charges." "Fraud charges," I repeated. "That's a serious thing, isn't it? Trying to pass off fakes as the real thing? Very serious, especially if you're claiming they're worth hundreds of thousands. That's felony territory, Evelyn. Why do you ask?" I smiled, the first real smile since I'd opened that empty drawer this morning. "No reason, Samuel. Just curious. It's good to hear your voice." I hung up the phone and looked at the iPad, still open to my son's confession. Let them have their first-class flight. Let them have their Maldives. Let them toast to their cleverness with champagne at 40,000 feet. The higher they flew, the harder they'd fall. They never asked about my work. In 47 years of being Tyler's mother, in 5 years of tolerating Chloe's presence at my dinner table, not once did either of them ask me about my career. Not how I started, not what I learned. Not the 30 years I spent building a reputation that jewelers from Atlanta to New York respected. To them, I was just Mom, just the old woman in the big house with the valuable things they wanted. They should have asked. I was 23 when I walked into Beaumont and Associates Fine Jewelers in downtown Savannah. It was 1979, the summer after I graduated from the Gemological Institute of America, and I was the only woman in a room full of men who looked at me like I'd wandered in by accident. "We're not hiring secretaries," the senior appraiser said. His name was Harold Beaumont III, and his mustache was the color of old ivory. "Good," I said, setting my certification on his desk. "I'm not here to type." He laughed. They all laughed. But Harold picked up my certificate, studied it, and then pulled a ring from his pocket, a ruby surrounded by diamonds, set in what looked like platinum. "Tell me about this," he said. The other men smirked. They thought it was a test I'd fail, a polite way to escort me out the door. I held the ring up to the light, turned it, studied the way the ruby caught the sun, the clarity of the stones, the metalwork on the band. Something wasn't right. The color was too perfect, too uniform. Natural rubies have silk, tiny needle-like inclusions that give them depth. This one was clean as glass. "The ruby is synthetic," I said. "Lab-created, probably flame fusion. The diamonds are real but low quality, I2 clarity at best. The setting is white gold, not platinum. And the whole piece is worth maybe $800, not the $15,000 your client probably paid for it." The room went silent. Harold Beaumont looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile, the first honest expression I'd seen on any of their faces. "You start Monday," he said. That was the beginning. For 30 years, I was the one they called when something didn't add up. Insurance companies, estate lawyers, collectors who suspected they'd been cheated. I could spot a fake the way some people spot a lie. Something in my gut would tighten, and I'd know before the tests confirmed it. It was during an estate appraisal in 1982 that I met Walter. He was the executor, handling his late aunt's collection, and he watched me work with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You really love this," he said, as I held a strand of pearls up to the light. "I love the truth," I told him. "Jewelry doesn't lie. People do. But the stones, The metals. They always tell you exactly what they are if you know how to listen. He asked me to dinner that night. 3 years later, I wore those same pearls, which I'd certified as genuine Akoya, by the way, when I walked down the aisle toward him. Walter understood me in a way no one else ever did. He knew that my precision wasn't coldness, that my attention to detail wasn't obsession. He knew that when I said I loved him, I meant it the same way I meant everything, completely and without deception. "You see people clearly," he told me once, late at night, his hand warm on my hip. "That's a gift, Evie, but it's also a burden. You can't unsee what you see." He was right. I couldn't. The day of Walter's funeral, I saw Chloe for what she was. It was a gray October morning 8 years ago. The church was full. Walter had been loved by half of Savannah, and I was numb in the particular way that new widows are, moving through the motions, shaking hands, accepting condolences, wearing my mother's diamond ring and my grandmother's sapphire necklace because Walter had always loved seeing me in them. Chloe and Tyler arrived late. They'd been married 2 years by then, and I still couldn't warm to her. There was something behind her eyes that reminded me of those synthetic rubies. Too perfect, too clear. No natural silk. She hugged me at the reception, her arms stiff and brief, and when she pulled back, I saw her gaze drop to my throat, to the sapphires. Her eyes lingered there for just a moment, calculating, appraising, and then she smiled. "Those are beautiful, Evelyn. Antique, aren't they?" 1928, I said. "My grandmother's. They must be worth a fortune." She laughed, a tinkling little sound. "Not that you'd ever sell them, of course. Family heirlooms and all that." Something cold moved through me. I'd spent 30 years reading people through their relationship to jewelry, the nervous husband buying an apology, the widow clinging to her wedding band, the heir impatient to know what they'd inherited. I knew greed when I saw it, and I saw it in Chloe's eyes, clear as a fingerprint on glass. That night, after the last guest left and the casseroles were stacked in my refrigerator and the silence of the house pressed down on me like a physical weight, I sat at my vanity and looked at my mother's ring. I thought about Tyler, my boy, my only child. He'd been distant at the funeral, checking his phone during the eulogy, letting Chloe steer him through conversations like a puppet on strings. When had I lost him? When had he become this stranger who looked at me with impatience instead of love? Chloe. She'd done it. Slowly, steadily, she'd turned my son against me. Or maybe she'd just revealed what was already there, a weakness in him, a hunger for easy paths that I'd tried so hard not to see. I couldn't save Tyler from himself. That wasn't my job anymore. But I could protect the things that mattered. The legacy my mother and grandmother had entrusted to me. The future I'd promised to secure for Lily. The next morning, I called Samuel Okonkwo. "I need replicas," I told him. "Perfect ones, good enough to fool anyone who doesn't know what they're looking for." Samuel was quiet for a moment. We'd worked together for 20 years. He didn't need me to explain. "You're expecting trouble," he said. "I'm preparing for it." He made the pieces over the following months, cubic zirconia diamonds that sparkled just like the real thing until you hit them with a thermal probe. Lab-created sapphires in the exact shade of my grandmother's necklace. Gold-plated coins that looked identical to the Krugerrands but weighed slightly different if you knew to check. I put the replicas in the vanity drawer. The real pieces went to First Savannah Trust Bank, locked in a safe deposit box with Lily's name as beneficiary. And then I waited. 7 years. I waited 7 years, watching Chloe's eyes slide to my jewelry at every holiday dinner, listening to Tyler's increasingly pointed comments about estate planning and fair distribution. I smiled. I said nothing. I let them think I was just a foolish old woman who couldn't see what was right in front of her. They forgot who I was. They forgot what I did for 30 years. They forgot that I was trained to spot fakes, and they were the biggest fakes of all. The phone rang, jolting me out of memory. The screen showed Lily's name, accompanied by a photo from her high school graduation, my granddaughter in her cap and gown, beaming at the camera with Walter's eyes and Sandra's smile. Sandra, Tyler's first wife, who died when Lily was 6, who made me promise to look after her daughter because she knew, even then, that Tyler couldn't be trusted. I answered with a steadiness I didn't feel. "Hello, sweetheart." "Grandma Evie." Lily's voice was bright, excited, young. "I just got my roommate assignment. Her name's Jessica, and she's from Oregon, and she's majoring in marine biology, and I think we're going to be best friends." My heart clenched. This girl, this precious, hopeful girl who had no idea what her father had done. "That sounds wonderful, honey." I kept my voice warm, normal. "When do you move in?" "August 23rd. I know it's still months away, but I'm already making lists. Did you know you need a mattress topper? Apparently the dorm mattresses are basically torture devices." I laughed, despite everything. "I'll add it to the list. We'll go shopping before you leave." "Grandma," her voice softened. "I never really said thank you for everything, for the college fund, for always being there when Dad." She trailed off. We both knew how that sentence ended. When Dad forgot her birthday, when Dad canceled visits, when Dad chose Chloe over his own daughter, again and again. "You don't need to thank me," I said. "That's what grandmothers are for. I love you, Grandma Evie. I love you too, Lily, more than you know." After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my kitchen and let the weight of it settle over me. Lily didn't know that the fund I'd promised her had been stolen this morning. She didn't know that her father had laughed at the idea of her education, said she could take out loans, said he deserved a vacation more than she deserved a future. She would never know. I would make sure of it. I walked to the living room, to the old mahogany bookshelf where I kept the family photographs. My mother on her wedding day, 1952, the diamond ring glinting on her finger. My grandmother at a society ball, 1928, the sapphire necklace dark against her white gown. 4 generations of women, passing down these treasures with a promise. For the granddaughters, for the future, for the ones who come after. Tyler wasn't part of that chain. He never had been. The jewelry was never meant for him, and somewhere in his selfish heart, he knew it. That was why he'd taken it the way he did, like a thief in the night, with cruelty and justification and a plane ticket already booked. But he hadn't taken anything. Not really. He'd taken replicas worth less than $1,000. He'd taken his own destruction wrapped in velvet and placed in a drawer for exactly this purpose. I touched the photograph of my mother's face. She looked back at me with eyes that understood, eyes that had seen their own share of betrayal and survived. "I kept my promise," I whispered to her. "I'll always keep my promise." The afternoon light slanted through the windows, golden and warm, and somewhere in the magnolia tree, the mockingbird finally sang. They thought they'd robbed me of my legacy. They had no idea that my legacy was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. The champagne was Dom Perignon, and Chloe made sure to photograph it. I can picture them perfectly. I've had nothing but time to imagine it, to reconstruct their journey from the fragments Tyler would later let slip in his desperate, rambling voicemails. First-class seats on Emirates, the ones that convert to private suites. Chloe in a cream silk blouse she'd bought for the occasion, her phone angled to capture the curve of her champagne flute against the window, the clouds beneath them like cotton batting. "Living our best life," she'd caption it. "Sometimes you just have to take what you deserve." I found the post later. 37 likes. A string of heart-eye emojis from Darlene. Tyler sat beside her, I imagine, with that particular expression he gets when he's done something wrong and is trying to convince himself otherwise. The tight jaw, the eyes that won't quite settle. He'd always been that way, even as a boy, stealing cookies from the jar and insisting the dog did it, even though we didn't have a dog. "Stop looking like that," Chloe would have said, not looking up from her phone. "We didn't do anything wrong." I know. Your mother has more money than she knows what to do with. She lives in that big house all alone, hoarding your inheritance like a dragon on a pile of gold. We liberated it. I know. And Lily will be fine. Kids today get loans all the time. It builds character. But Tyler would have been thinking about the phone call, about my voice when I mentioned Lily's college fund, about the silence after he hung up, that particular silence that follows when you've done something that can't be undone. He shook it off, I'm sure. Tyler has always been good at shaking things off. That's his gift and his curse, the ability to bury his conscience under layers of justification until he can barely hear it whimpering. The flight was 14 hours. 14 hours of champagne and first-class service, and Chloe planning how they'd spend the money. The buyer I found specializes in estate pieces, she told Tyler, her voice low even though no one was listening. He works with wealthy guests at the resort. Very discreet, no questions asked. How do you know he's legitimate? Chloe had smiled. I found him through a forum. High-end pieces, private sales, cash transactions. He takes a percentage, but we walk away clean. What percentage? 20. Tyler would have calculated in his head. Even at 20%, they'd clear almost $400,000. Enough to pay off their credit cards. Enough for a down payment on the house Chloe had been eyeing in Buckhead. Enough to start fresh, free from the weight of waiting for his mother to die. He'd have nodded, convinced himself this was fine, and ordered another drink. The Maldives welcomed them like the paradise it pretends to be. I've seen the pictures, not from Chloe's Instagram, but from the resort's website, which I looked up in the quiet hours after midnight when sleep wouldn't come. The overwater bungalow, with its glass floor panels, fish swimming lazily beneath your feet. The infinity pool that seems to pour directly into the Indian Ocean. The white sand, the turquoise water, the staff who greet you with flower garlands and chilled towels. $32,000 for 7 nights. That's what my mother's ring bought them. That's what my grandmother's sapphires purchased. A week in paradise built on theft. They arrived on a seaplane, because of course they did. Chloe posted a video of the approach, the water shifting from deep blue to impossible turquoise as they descended. Is this real life? She wrote. Pinch me. Their bungalow had a private deck with steps leading directly into the lagoon. A butler, they called him a butler, though I'm sure that wasn't his actual title, brought them fruit plates and more champagne. Chloe changed into a white bikini and posed for photos while Tyler pretended to read a book about cryptocurrency investing. The meeting was scheduled for their second evening. His name is Mr. Ashworth, Chloe told Tyler as she applied her makeup. I imagine her leaning into the mirror, perfecting her lipstick, confident and controlled. British. Very professional. He has a suite at the resort, does business with all the wealthy guests who want to quietly sell pieces without going through traditional channels. Why would wealthy people need to secretly sell jewelry? Chloe had rolled her eyes. Divorces, tax situations, inheritance disputes. Use your imagination, Tyler. The point is, he pays cash and doesn't ask questions. Tyler would have felt a flicker of unease, the word disputes hanging in the air. But Chloe was already moving toward the door, the velvet pouch containing my family's treasures tucked into her designer handbag. Coming? She asked. Not really a question. He came. Mr. Ashworth was not what they expected. I know this because Tyler described him later in one of those voicemails I still haven't deleted. His voice cracking, his words tumbling over each other like a man trying to outrun his own confession. They'd expected someone slick, someone who matched the shadowy glamour of discreet high-value transactions. Instead, they found a man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and the quiet, methodical demeanor of an accountant. His suite was tasteful, but not ostentatious. A desk by the window, good lighting, and spread across the desk, the tools of his trade, a jeweler's loop, a thermal conductivity probe, a small bottle of acid, and a testing stone. Please, Mr. Ashworth said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. Make yourselves comfortable. May I see the pieces? Chloe handed over the velvet pouch with the confidence of a woman who had never been wrong about anything in her life. "They're estate pieces, my husband's family, very high quality." Mr. Ashworth opened the pouch and let the contents spill gently onto a velvet pad. The diamond ring caught the light. The sapphire necklace gleamed deep blue. The pearl earrings glowed with that soft luster that makes people think of moonlight on water. The gold coins sat heavy and promising. "Beautiful," Mr. Ashworth murmured. "Quite beautiful." He picked up the ring first, held it to the light, turned it slowly, the way I taught my students to do, looking for the telltale signs that separate truth from illusion. Then he reached for the thermal probe. This is the moment, I think, when Tyler's stomach first clenched. A thermal probe measures heat conductivity. Diamonds conduct heat faster than almost any other material. It's one of their unique signatures, the reason they feel cold to the touch, even on a warm day. Cubic zirconia, no matter how perfectly cut, conducts heat differently. The probe doesn't lie. Mr. Ashworth touched the probe to the center stone. A pause. A frown. He tried again. "Is there a problem?" Chloe asked. Her voice was still confident, but I imagine a hairline crack was forming beneath the surface. Mr. Ashworth didn't answer. He set down the ring and picked up the necklace, examining the sapphires with his loupe. Then he reached for the acid test, a small drop of nitric acid on the gold coins, watched for the telltale reaction that distinguishes real gold from plated impostors. The silence stretched. The air conditioning hummed. Outside, the Indian Ocean continued its eternal performance of paradise, indifferent to the drama unfolding in this small, well-lit room. Mr. Ashworth removed his glasses and polished them slowly with a cloth from his pocket. When he looked up, his expression had changed completely. "I'm afraid," he said, "there's been a misunderstanding." "What do you mean?" Chloe's voice had gone sharp. "Those pieces are worth at least $400,000. They've been in his family for generations." "Madam," Mr. Ashworth's tone was patient, the way a teacher speaks to a child who has made a fundamental error. "These pieces are not worth $400,000. They are not worth $4,000. The diamond is cubic zirconia. The sapphires are lab-created synthetics. The gold coins are plated brass. And the pearls," he held one up to the light, "are quite good imitations, I'll grant you, but imitations nonetheless." Tyler told me later that the room went very quiet, that he could hear his own heartbeat and the soft lap of water against the bungalow stilts outside. That he looked at Chloe and saw something he'd never seen before. Genuine, uncomprehending shock. "That's impossible," Chloe whispered. "We took them from—" She stopped, but it was too late. Mr. Ashworth's eyes had sharpened. "You took them?" "From his mother," Chloe said quickly. "A gift, an early inheritance." "An early inheritance of worthless replicas?" Mr. Ashworth was already reaching for his phone. "I think perhaps we should have a conversation with resort security, and possibly the local authorities. Attempting to sell counterfeit jewelry as genuine is fraud, you understand. A serious crime in the Maldives." Tyler stood up, his chair scraped against the floor. Wait, there has to be a mistake. My mother, she's had those pieces for decades." But even as he said it, I imagined the realization was dawning. The terrible, beautiful truth of what I had done. 30 years as a jewelry appraiser. 7 years of watching and waiting. Replicas so perfect they'd fooled his greedy eyes and Chloe's hungry fingers. His mother wasn't a helpless old woman. His mother had been 3 steps ahead of him the entire time. "Mom," Tyler breathed. "Oh my God. Mom." Mr. Ashworth was speaking into his phone. Chloe was arguing, her voice rising to a pitch that probably carried across the water to the neighboring bungalows. But Tyler just stood there, frozen, understanding finally what he had done and what had been done to him. He'd stolen from the wrong woman, and now paradise was crumbling around him like sand castles in the tide. They took him through the lobby. That's the part Tyler mentioned most in his voicemails. Not the handcuffs, not the interrogation room, not the cold reality of Maldivian law bearing down on him. It was the walk through the lobby, past the infinity pool where couples sipped cocktails at sunset, past the reception desk where the same staff who'd greeted them with flower garlands now looked away in embarrassment, past a family with 2 young children who stared openly as resort security escorted him toward the back offices. "There's been a misunderstanding," Tyler kept saying. "I can explain. My mother. This is all a misunderstanding." But the security officers didn't care about misunderstandings. They cared about Mr. Ashworth's statement. They cared about the counterfeit jewelry now sealed in evidence bags. They cared about the fraud charges that were being drafted even as Tyler's flip-flops slapped against the marble floors of paradise. And Chloe? Chloe was already talking. I didn't witness it, of course, but I know my daughter-in-law. I know how her mind works, always calculating, always finding the angle that benefits her most. The moment the situation turned, she would have pivoted faster than a weather vane in a hurricane. "I had no idea," she told the officers, her voice trembling with manufactured shock. "Tyler told me they were real. He said they were family heirlooms, that his mother had given them to him. I never would have. I'm a victim here, too." Tyler stared at her. This woman he'd married. This woman he'd betrayed his mother for, ignored his daughter for, sold his soul for. She wouldn't even meet his eyes. "Chloe." His voice cracked. "Chloe, what are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth, Tyler." She finally looked at him, and there was nothing behind her eyes. No love, no loyalty, nothing but the cold arithmetic of self-preservation. "I didn't steal anything." "You did. You told me your mother gave you those pieces." "That's not— You planned this. The whole thing was your idea." But Chloe was already shaking her head, already dabbing at dry eyes, already crafting the narrative that would separate her fate from his. "I don't know what he's talking about. I think he might be having some kind of breakdown. This trip was supposed to be romantic. And now?" She let out a sob that even the security officers must have recognized as theater. They took Tyler to a small, windowless room in the back of the resort's administrative building. They took Chloe to give a statement in a comfortable lounge where she was offered water and sympathy. The last thing Tyler saw before the door closed was his wife walking away without looking back. The phone calls started around midnight, Savannah time. I was in my kitchen, brewing chamomile tea. The house was quiet in that particular way it gets late at night, the grandfather clock ticking, the old bones of the building settling, the mockingbird finally silent in the magnolia tree. I'd changed into my robe. My feet were warm in the slippers Walter gave me our last Christmas together. My phone buzzed on the counter. Tyler's name. I watched it ring. 1, 2, 3. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again almost immediately, and again and again. Between calls, text messages appeared, frantic, misspelled, desperate. "Mom, please pick up. There's been a mistake. I need help. Mom, please. I'm in trouble. Please call me back. Mom." I sipped my tea. It was good chamomile. I'd ordered it from a little shop in Charleston that sources their herbs from local farms. Walter used to tease me about my tea obsession. "You're going to turn into a teapot yourself," he'd say, and I'd swat his arm with a dish towel, and he'd catch my hand and pull me close. The phone rang again. I turned it face down on the counter. The doorbell broke the silence about 20 minutes later. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Some things you just sense, the particular energy of guilt and desperation bleeding through a door. I took my time setting down my tea, smoothing my robe, walking through the hallway with its parade of family portraits. Darlene Vickers stood on my porch, her face arranged in an expression of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Evelyn," she pressed a hand to her chest. "I saw your lights on and I heard something happened?" "With Tyler? Someone at church mentioned, 'Are you all right, honey?'" I studied her. My friend of 15 years, the woman who'd held my hand at Walter's funeral, the woman who'd fed my son's wife information for months, who'd helped them map out the theft of my family's legacy. "Come in, Darlene," I said. "I think we should talk." She hesitated, something flickering behind her eyes, but curiosity won out. It always did with Darlene. She needed to know what was happening, needed to position herself correctly, needed to make sure none of the shrapnel from this explosion landed on her. I led her to the living room. The good room, with the antique settee and the family photographs and the Tiffany lamp Walter bought me for our 30th anniversary. Darlene perched on the edge of a chair like a bird ready for flight. "What happened?" she asked. "I'm just so worried about you, all alone in this big house with—" "Tyler is in custody in the Maldives," I said calmly, "for fraud." Darlene's face cycled through several expressions: shock, confusion, something that looked almost like satisfaction, before settling on practiced concern. "Fraud? I don't understand. What could Tyler possibly—" "He tried to sell my mother's jewelry," I continued. "Or what he thought was my mother's jewelry. It turns out the pieces he stole from my vanity were replicas, worthless, and attempting to sell worthless replicas as genuine articles is a crime." "He stole," Darlene started. "You can stop, Darlene." She went still. I reached into the pocket of my robe and pulled out my phone. I'd saved the voicemail for exactly this moment, found it on Tyler's iPad, forwarded to myself, kept like ammunition. "I found this interesting," I said, pressing play. Darlene's voice filled the room, tinny through the phone speaker, but unmistakable. "Tyler, honey, I just wanted to say I think you're absolutely right. Your mother is being selfish, keeping all those valuable pieces locked away. She doesn't even wear them. You and Chloe deserve to enjoy them now while you're young. Life is short, and honestly, Evelyn won't even notice they're gone. She's not as sharp as she used to be. Everyone at church says so. You're doing the right thing, sweetheart." The silence that followed was magnificent. Darlene's face went white, then red. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled suddenly from water. "That's not— I didn't mean— Evelyn, you have to understand," Chloe said. "Chloe said what? That you'd be rewarded? That you'd finally be included in her glamorous life?" I shook my head slowly. "You sold me out, Darlene. 15 years of friendship, and you sold me for the promise of Instagram likes and invitations to parties that were never going to happen. I didn't know they were going to steal. You encouraged my son to take what wasn't his. You told him I wouldn't notice because I'm not sharp. You've been feeding Chloe information about my routines, my possessions, my life for 18 months. I leaned forward. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I was too old and confused to put the pieces together?" Darlene was crying now. Real tears, I think, though with her it was always hard to tell. "Evelyn, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was lonely, and Chloe was so nice to me, and I never thought—" "You never thought about me at all." The words hung between us. Darlene's sobs filled the room, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a vast, tired emptiness where our friendship used to live. "I'd like you to leave now," I said. "Evelyn, I'm not going to call the police. I'm not going to tell Pastor Ron or anyone else what you did. But I am done, Darlene. We are done. Please go home and don't come back." She left. I didn't watch her go. I just listened to the door close and her footsteps fade down the porch stairs, and then I was alone again in my living room with the family photographs and the Tiffany lamp and the silence. My phone rang. Not Tyler this time. My sister Vera's name on the screen. Vera, 3 years older than me. Always jealous, ever since we were girls sharing a bedroom in our parents' house on the coast. She'd married money and lost it. I'd married love and kept it. She'd never forgiven me for either. I answered. "Evelyn?" Vera's voice was honey-coated concern. "I just heard the most terrible thing about Tyler. Honey, are you okay? Do you need me to come down there? How did you hear, Vera?" A pause. "What? Tyler is in custody on the other side of the world. No one knows yet except the people involved. How did you hear?" Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear her recalculating. "Chloe called me. she finally admitted. She's very upset. She says Tyler manipulated her. And what else did Chloe tell you? Before today, I mean. What did she tell you when they were planning this? Silence. Tyler showed me the text messages, Vera, the ones where Chloe asked for your opinion and you told her I was hoarding family wealth selfishly. Or the ones where you said it was only fair that Tyler take what should have been his. I heard her breath catch. That jewelry was never Tyler's, I said quietly. It was never yours either, no matter how much you coveted Mother's ring when we were young. It was always meant for the granddaughters. You knew that, and you helped them anyway. Evelyn, Goodbye, Vera. I hung up. The house settled around me. The grandfather clock chimed 1 in the morning. The mockingbird was silent, sleeping in his magnolia tree. I sat in the good room with the masks all fallen around me, Darlene, Vera, Tyler, Chloe, and I felt something I hadn't expected, not grief, not anger, peace. The people who were supposed to love me had shown me exactly who they were, and I had shown them exactly who I was. Tomorrow, I would call the bank. Tomorrow, I would set everything in motion for Lily. But tonight, I finished my tea in the silence, and I didn't feel alone at all. The morning I went to the bank, the azaleas were in full bloom. I drove down Abercorn Street with the windows cracked open, letting the spring air fill the car with the scent of Confederate jasmine and something sweeter, magnolia maybe, or the roses in Mrs. Patterson's yard 3 houses down. Savannah in March is a city remembering how to breathe after winter, and I found myself breathing with it. First Savannah Trust Bank sits on the corner of Bull and Broughton, a limestone building from 1892 with brass doors that weigh more than I do. Walter used to joke that the doors were designed to keep out riffraff, and I'd elbow him and say the only riffraff I knew was him. He'd laugh that big laugh of his, the one that came from somewhere deep in his chest, and hold the door open with an exaggerated bow. I pushed through the heavy doors alone now, but I didn't feel alone. The safe deposit vault is in the basement, down a flight of marble stairs worn smooth by a century of footsteps. Mr. Clarence Webb, the bank manager, 72 years old and still sharp as a diamond, met me at the bottom with a warm handshake and warmer eyes. Mrs. Hartwell. He'd known Walter for 40 years, known me almost as long. I had a feeling I'd be seeing you soon. Did you now? He smiled, that gentle southern smile that says more than words. Word travels. I'm sorry for your troubles, and I'm glad you were prepared for them. The vault attendant led us to my box, number 247, the same number as our old house on Liberty Street where Tyler took his first steps. I'd chosen it on purpose back when I made the arrangements, a reminder of better times, a reminder of who my son used to be before Chloe, before bitterness, before greed hollowed him out. The box slid open, and there they were. My mother's diamond ring catching the fluorescent light and breaking it into rainbows, the sapphire necklace, deep blue as a midnight ocean, the stones my grandmother wore to her first dance in 1928, the pearl drops from my wedding night, still glowing with that soft lunar luminescence, and the Krugerrands, 12 gold coins, heavy with promise and memory. I touched each piece. Let my fingers remember. I need to liquidate some of these, I told Mr. Webb. Not all, but enough. For Miss Lily, for Lily. He nodded like this was the most natural thing in the world. Because it was. This was always the plan. Not the theft, not the replicas, not the elaborate trap I'd laid for my own son. Those were contingencies. The plan, the real plan, was always Lily. Always the next generation. Always the promise I'd made to my mother and she'd made to hers. The sapphires should cover 4 years of tuition with room to spare, I said. I'd like to keep my mother's ring, and the pearls. Walter would want Lily to have those someday. Mr. Webb made the arrangements. Papers were signed. Phone calls were made to reputable buyers, real ones, not the kind who operate out of resort suites in the Maldives. By the time I walked back up those marble stairs and through those brass doors, Lily's future was secure. The azaleas bobbed in the breeze as I drove home. I thought about calling Lily, but this news deserved to be delivered in person. Sandra's mother, Eleanor, lived in a white clapboard house in Pooler, 20 minutes west of Savannah proper. She'd raised Lily since Sandra died. Cancer, fast and cruel, when Lily was only 6. Tyler had been worse than useless during those years, too consumed with his own grief, and then too consumed with Chloe to remember he had a daughter who needed him. Eleanor met me at the door with knowing eyes. She was 74, silver-haired, with hands that shook slightly from the Parkinson's she didn't like to talk about. But her gaze was steady. "She's in the garden," Eleanor said. "I told her you were coming. I didn't tell her why." "Thank you." I found Lily kneeling in the vegetable patch, her hands dark with soil, transplanting tomato seedlings into neat rows. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, and her face did that thing it always did, brightening first, then clouding with the worry that lived permanently behind her eyes. The worry of a child who'd learned too young that people leave. "Grandma Evie." She stood, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Is everything okay? Gran said you needed to talk to me." I sat down on the garden bench, patted the space beside me. She sat, still studying my face for clues. "I need to tell you something about your father," I said, "and I need you to hear all of it before you respond." I told her. Not everything. She didn't need to know about Darlene's betrayal or Vera's jealousy or the ugly details of Tyler's voicemails from detention. But I told her what mattered. That Tyler and Chloe had tried to take her college fund. That they'd failed. That the money was secure, every penny of it, waiting for her at First Savannah Trust Bank. Lily didn't cry at first. She went very still, the way young people do when they're processing something too large for the space they've built to hold their pain. "He knew," she finally said. "He knew that money was for me." "Yes. And he took it anyway, for a vacation." "He tried to. He didn't succeed. Because you outsmarted him." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "You really made fake jewelry? Years ago?" "I really did." Now the tears came, hot and angry and confused all at once. "How could he do that? I'm his daughter." "I know he's not. I know we're not close, but I thought—" She broke off, shaking her head. "I thought there was a limit. You know? I thought there was a line he wouldn't cross." I took her hand. Her fingers were still cold from the soil, and I warmed them between my palms the way I used to when she was small. "Your father is a weak man," I said. "He married a woman who brought out the worst in him, and he didn't have the strength to resist. That's not your fault. It was never your fault. But, listen to me, Lily." I turned to face her fully, held her gaze. "You don't have to carry his burden. What he did, who he chose to become, that's his weight, not yours. Your job is to go to college, study hard, build a life that makes you proud. The rest of it, the anger, the grief, the wondering why, you can put that down. You don't have to carry it." "What about him? What happens to him now?" I thought about Tyler in that detention room, about the calls I hadn't answered, about the voicemails I'd finally listened to, one by one, hearing my son's voice crack and break and beg. "That depends on him," I said. "The door isn't closed, Lily. Not forever. But he has to be the one to walk through it. He has to earn his way back. And if he never does—" I squeezed her hand. "You'll still be okay. I promise you that." She leaned into me then, her head on my shoulder, and we sat in Eleanor's garden with the tomato seedlings and the spring sunshine and the particular peace that comes from telling the truth. The locksmith came on a Tuesday. I watched him work, drilling out the old locks, installing new deadbolts, programming a keypad for the back door. It took most of the afternoon. When he finished, he handed me a single key and a code I'd chosen myself. 1982, the year I met Walter. "You're all set, Mrs. Hartwell," he said. "These locks are top of the line. Nobody's getting in here without your say-so. Nobody. Not Tyler with his copied key, not Chloe with her scheming, not anyone who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. I paid him in cash, tipped generously, and closed the door behind him. Then I stood in my foyer, my mother's foyer, my grandmother's foyer, and listened to the silence of a house that was finally, fully mine. The phone rang. I knew before I looked. Some things you just know. Collect call from International Detention Facility. Will you accept the charges? I accepted. Mom? Tyler's voice was small, hoarse. He'd been crying. I could hear it in the thickness of his words. Mom, are you there? I'm here, Tyler. I'm sorry. The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to. Mom? I messed up. I messed up so bad. Chloe left me. She told them everything was my idea and they let her go, and she left, Mom. And I'm stuck here and I don't know what to do, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He broke down, sobbing like he hadn't sobbed since he was 12 years old and his dog got hit by a car. I listened to him cry, my son, my only child, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness. That would take longer. But something softer than the anger I'd been carrying. Tyler, I said when his sobs quieted. Listen to me. He listened. What you did was wrong. It was cruel and selfish, and it hurt me in ways I'm still understanding. You tried to steal your daughter's future for a vacation. You let Chloe poison you against your own family. You forgot who I was and what I taught you. I know. I'm not finished. I kept my voice steady. But you are still my son, and the door isn't closed. Do you understand? It's not closed. But you have to be the one to open it. How? His voice was desperate. How do I fix this? You start by facing the consequences. Whatever happens with the authorities there, you face it. You don't run. You don't make excuses. Then you come home and you start rebuilding. Not with me. Not yet. With Lily. She's the one you hurt most, Tyler. She's the one you have to earn back first. Lily, he repeated. Does she know? She knows, and she's angry, and she's hurt. But she's also your daughter, and I've never known that girl to give up on anyone she loves. I paused. She still loves you, Tyler. God knows why, but she does. Don't waste that. Silence on the line, the hum of international static. Mom? His voice was small again. Do you still love me? I looked at the family photographs on my wall. Tyler at 5, gap-toothed and grinning. Tyler at 12, holding the trophy from his first debate competition. Tyler at 22, graduating from college, Walter's arm around his shoulders. The boy I raised was still in there somewhere, buried under years of poor choices and worse influences, but still there. I never stopped, I said. That's not something you can steal. I hung up before he could respond. Some conversations need time to breathe. Some truths need space to settle. The afternoon light slanted through the windows, golden and warm. I walked to my vanity, my mother's vanity, and opened the velvet-lined drawer. Empty now, but I'd fill it again someday. Different pieces, maybe. New memories layered over old. I slipped my mother's ring onto my finger. The real one, retrieved from the safe deposit box, warm with afternoon sun. It fit perfectly, the way it always had. Outside, the mockingbird was singing his heart out in the magnolia tree. The azaleas blazed pink and defiant. And somewhere across the ocean, my son was sitting in a detention room, facing the consequences of his choices for the first time in his life. I'd raised him to be better than this. Maybe, just maybe, he could still become that person. But that was his journey. Mine was here, in this house full of memories and promise, with Lily's future secured, with the locks changed, with my mother's ring on my finger and my grandmother's strength in my spine. They thought they could take my legacy. They forgot that I am the legacy, and I'm not going anywhere. And